Thanks again for joining us on yet another episode of our series, The Catholic View for Women, News and Views for Women from a Truly Catholic Perspective. I'm Teresa Tomeo, one of the co-hosts of this show, along with Astrid Bennett Gutierrez and Janet Morana to my right. And in the next two episodes of The Catholic View, we are going to discuss what we're calling weird science. And ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about weird science indeed, because there's all kinds of things that are happening out there with couples who are trying to get pregnant, and who knows if someone in your family may be experiencing this right now, led down a path, God forbid, of in vitro fertilization. There's also stories out there now about selective reduction. In the next episode, we're looking at how women are being objectified and they're damaging themselves physically, spiritually, economically, through egg harvesting, all kinds of strange things going on. And again, you know, we keep talking about this in this series. Everything keeps going back to contraception and this whole attitude. It's craziness.
It is. You know, there's two sides here with the in vitro, is that very often the couples that are doing it are just not even aware that it's against church teaching. I mean, some of them are just really people who have been raised good Catholics, married in the church, trying to have a child, innocently go down this road. But why? Because the doctors are recommending it. You know, a girl who's going to her gynecologist month after month when they're trying to have a family, and she's having difficulties, they're ruling out different things, and they try this and that. I mean, and very often it's the doctors who are recommending IVF, and then they're not totally thinking about it and analyzing what's happening, but they're so desperate wanting to have a child, they begin going down this road. Recently, a very dear friend of mine was telling me that she was shocked to find out her own daughter was going to do this. And I said to her, I said, but it's so expensive. And I said, you know, I said, first of all, the church's teaching is against this. And she goes, I know, I'm so upset. And she said, believe it or not, the doctor introduced her to a hospital that was accepting patients on a very low budget as like experimental trials. And she's going to do this because she feels that I could finally conceive a child. And I said, oh my goodness. She goes, I'm heartbroken. I tried to tell her about the teachings, but she doesn't think that there's anything wrong with it, you know? And that's what the problem is. You know, we all know how in vitro works. You know, they collect the woman's eggs, they collect the sperm from the dad, and then you're literally conceiving in a petri dish.
In a petri dish.
Petri dish. And they take multiple embryos then at that point, which are human beings, and then they freeze them until it's time to do the procedure, because they have to wait till a certain point to do the procedure on the woman, because then they have to give her all kinds of extra injections and things to get her uterus like ripe for implantation of all these. And then what they do is they'll implant as many as 5, 6, or 7 embryos, children, because they know they all won't take it. In some cases, they won't take it all. I mean, so now you've destroyed those 5, 6, and 7 lives. And the other thing is that many women try this more than once, and the expense they go through.
And it's also, from what I understand, very painful and damaging physically.
It is.
Now, you've got some quotes. We've got a lot of material to go over.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
you found some really interesting work
and this is
in
the
your
point.
information
what
in your
happens
research.
is, once they say it's successful, so very often they'll have triplets or quads that they've conceived. And here's the dilemma. I'm going to read, this is from one gentleman, and here's what he says. I just have to read his whole complete story because it's
And this
so sad.
combines the two things we're talking about,
Right.
in vitro and selective reduction.
Because that's the next step. What happens is when they're successful, it's usually more than just a singleton, as they would put it. It's a multiple birth, you know, multiple pregnancy. So let's see what this one gentleman said. My soul carries a new scar. The pain is fresh and keen. And I know that while time might see the pain fade, I will never fully recover from what I've been through and done. For I have failed intentionally and knowingly in the first duty of a parent, protecting the 2 lives of my children. My wife and I wanted children. Alas, we needed IVF treatment to realize this dream. Several cycles and multiple embryo implantations later, we welcomed our blessing from God, who is the light of our lives. Recently, we tried for another. It never rains, but it pours, said the fertility doctor. Of the 3 embryos that were implanted, all 3 took. We were faced with the news of triplets. I was shocked knowing the burden that would entail, but since God gave us 3, I was prepared to do whatever I needed to do to help manage and provide. My wife, something snapped. She insisted that we do a selective reduction from 3 to 1, or else she would have a full abortion. She was adamant. She would not carry 3. She would not carry 2. I was presented with a difficult decision. Save one or save none. I chose the former, though I tried on several occasions to convince her to at least keep twins. I failed. We were told point blank by the doctor who would do the procedure that they would inject potassium chloride into the placenta to stop their hearts. We were told point blank that it was painless. Even then I knew I was being lied to, but given the choice presented, I agreed anyway. My mantra became, save one or save
Oh my
none.
goodness.
This is just part of the culture of death. I mean, it's another fruit, right, from the same tree
right.
of contraception. I'm sorry, but sometimes selfishness. We understand that people who cannot conceive children, it is a cross to bear, but when you see what happens here, babies are dying and women are suffering tremendously. I've heard of women that have also died because of the hyperstimulation of their ovaries. So it's a very dangerous procedure, but we know, Janet and Teresa, that it's a multi-million-dollar
the money
industry.
involved.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of money involved, so couples automatically are offered in vitro, and they're not told about alternative treatments that are healthier and much more inexpensive.
Right.
It's frightening to me because this is what the church is talking about in terms of us playing God. And in this case, we really are trying to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, just awful. Oh.
Right. And you know, as of course, Teresa, I'm a mother of twins myself, and I remember what it was like. I had a 23-month-old child when my twins were born. So you can imagine, you have one, and then you find out suddenly having twins. And I didn't find out till my 9th month, but this is before ultrasound came into play. I remember feeling anxious and upset, like, oh my goodness, how am I going to take care of 2 babies? But never in the world did I ever think that I would want one of them taken away and only deal with one. You know, but I can understand that panic sets in when you hear it's a multiple birth, or that you're carrying. But no way. But here's another example. Listen to this woman. As Jenny lay on the obstetrician's examination table, she was grateful that the ultrasound tech had turned off the overhead screen. She didn't want to see the 2 shadows floating inside her. Since making her decision, she had tried not to think about them, though she could often think of little else. She was 45 and pregnant after 6 years of fertility pills, ovulation injections, donor eggs, and disappointment, and yet there she was, 14 weeks into her pregnancy, choosing to extinguish one of those 2 healthy fetuses, almost as if having half an abortion. As the doctor inserted the needle into Jenny's abdomen, aiming at one of the fetuses, Jenny tried not to flinch, caught between intense relief and intense guilt.
Now, that was an article that was written, it was in Weekend New York Times Magazine.
It was.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you remember, I
You
was
were at my house.
I was at
Yeah.
Teresa's house. I read this article, and of course, being a mother of twins, I screamed. I said, I can't imagine this. I can't imagine this. Having 2 children inside of you and laying there, like she's saying, and knowing that one is deliberately being killed.
And remember, we were talking about that article. What was so frustrating about it is that they were trying to present, and the New York Times, being so balanced. And
So
see, in our
balanced.
day and age now, we have this option.
That's right.
For women and
For
for
women.
families, and it's
Right.
okay, and it's
another
just
attack on the
weird
unborn.
science, as
It
we're
is,
talking about
it
today.
is.
We're going to take a break. We have a lot more material to cover. When we come back, we're going to hear from a medical expert and what the church says about these things, and also what is the correct way to approach infertility. It's not that the church is insensitive to this, it's that there's a godly and a proper way to go about this. Stay tuned. We'll be right back for more Catholic View for Women right here on EWTN. You're watching the Catholic View for Women. My name is Teresa Tomeo, along with Astrid Bennett Gutierrez and Janet Marana. And in this episode, we are taking a look at women and weird science. We're looking at specifically something called selective reduction and also, of course, in vitro fertilization. Now, before the break, Janet read some pretty dramatic testimonies, but we want to stress these cases are not something, out of the blue. They're not exactly unique or singular, correct?
No. I mean, if you go on the internet, there are actually websites that are like support chat rooms for women who are selective reducing, and this is happening on a daily basis all over our country. Actually, it was the New York Times article that made me aware of it. I had no idea about this, and that's what got me so crazy.
Well, the fact that
about
New
it,
York Times decided to do this, and it's probably something they learned about, knowing how the media operate. They wouldn't do it unless it was they thought it would obviously sell magazines. It was in the Sunday edition of the New York Times and the Weekend magazine, correct, from what I understand.
Right. That's right.
But also because this is happening a lot, and there's probably some controversy, but they want to attempt to quiet this down a little bit, but at the same time give it a quote-unquote normal.
Right.
Not
You
just
know,
normal
yeah.
They know it's an abortion. It basically
Right.
is.
That's
but
right.
they
So
have
more justification for
right,
this type of stuff.
To attack the unborn or to not protect them. But it's a very odd dichotomy. You have the couple choosing one of the children that they're pregnant with and aborting the other. So they have to be more aware than the average person aborting that they really are killing their child. It's very tragic.
It goes back, though, to what you were saying earlier about contraception, because it's about this objectification. Whether you're objectifying your husband or your wife, now it's the child, because a child is like something, well, it's like a car or,
Something,
you
well,
know,
they're
a
picking
set
and
of wine glasses or something. I don't need 6, I'm only going to take 4. I mean, this is nuts.
And notice what that woman said, you know, guilt and relief. Okay, you know, which way the needle is going to go. So what happens is that which baby gets to live, whichever one the doctor can get the easiest with the needle is the one
And
that's
aren't there
destroyed.
studies, now you know as a mother of
Right.
twins, aren't there studies to show that there's that connection that goes on in the womb
Between
with the
twins,
babies?
absolutely there is. I mean, my twins are fraternal twins because people really think that that connection only happens with identicals. I can tell you it's not so. With my fraternal twins, which actually one is living on the East Coast and one is the West Coast. And to this day, they almost sense when the other one isn't feeling well or someone is having a problem, they'll call each other or, you know, text or, you know, Facebook each other. They really have a keen sense of what's going on with the other, and even as fraternal twins. And while they don't verbalize their life in utero, certain things they talk about are obviously a time they had together before being born.
Women have the right to know what's happening in their bodies and what this technology is really going to do to them.
Right, and the guilt. I mean, we're talking about having a guilt from really it is an abortion, destroying the life of your child, and and then every time you look at the born child, you know that you destroyed 1 or 2 other children. I mean, how do you deal with that as an ongoing basis? Just looking that and then that child always has to go have a higher benchmark because the parent is thinking, if that child
if I
has
didn't
problems,
kill that one, maybe you
the
know,
other one would have been smarter, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe they wouldn't have had this problem, or maybe I got rid of
the wrong one.
It's absolutely terrible, and but there is a good way. The church has a yes to infertility. You know, that's the thing we wanted to point out.
And Pope
here.
Benedict actually, recently, not too long ago, just actually was talking about infertility. There was actually a conference at the Vatican. So this is not an issue the church is ignoring.
No,
and that's
it's
what we
not.
want to make sure people understand.
And people might be familiar with the name of Dr. Hilgers,
Yes.
Tom Hilgers. He has the Pope Paul VI Institute
In Omaha,
Nebraska. And he has developed a technique called naprotechnology. And actually, I have firsthand knowledge of this, even by some of my employees at Priests for Life. You know, were girls who were married and having difficulty conceiving, and one of them actually flew all the way out to Nebraska for surgery with Dr. Hilgers, and her and her husband had tried for a very long period of time, and she had complications and things, but surgically he did some little corrections, and she has a beautiful little girl now. And
praise
we have
God.
praise God. And I have another a woman who went to one of Dr. Hilgers, because now he's trained other doctors around the country in the naprotechnology, and another girl went to, again, a local one in New York, Dr. Hilgers' doctor, and she now has 2 children. So, and if you ever go out to the Pope Paul VI Institute, his hallways aligned with baby pictures
Yeah.
that were these were couples who were all infertile, did not go down the IVF round, but sought naprotechnology and were able, in line with the church's teaching, conceive a child.
Now you interviewed
Truly
a doctor who was trained by
That's right.
Hilgers.
Yes, I recently had a conversation with a doctor, and let's take a look at what the doctor had to say, the doctor's advice right now on naprotechnology.
Almost every woman's health condition at this point in history is treated with the birth control pill. And it's a little bit disturbing if you think about it. What happened when the birth control pill was created was that it gave doctors an easy way out for things like abnormal bleeding, irregular periods, painful periods. All of a sudden, doctors no longer needed to continue to look for the why, the underlying reason that a woman was having that problem. All of a sudden, the answer was just to shut down that system. But we don't do that in any other area of healthcare. In every other field of medicine, we look at what's causing the underlying problem, we diagnose the condition, and then we treat it using medicine that's meant to restore health and normal function. Now, the Catholic Church gets a bad rap for being anti-woman because they take this position against birth control. And the Church is against it for many reasons. But even if you step back and look at it from a medical perspective, what you see in what the Church has done is that good ethics has actually led to better medicine. So Catholic physicians, unwilling to simply give women a pill that shuts down a normally functioning system, continue to work to identify the underlying cause and then correct it using treatments, whether it's medicines, whether it's natural hormones, whether it's surgery. But all of the treatments are geared towards correcting the underlying problem to restore normal health. So just as an example, many women have irregular cycles. They come at unpredictable times. Bleeding occurs in an unpredictable way. If you go to a regular OBGYN, they're just going to say, here, take the birth control pill. They are not going to tell you that the birth control pill has very real side effects like depression, decreased libido, weight gain. They're also not going to tell women that they have very real risks, small percentage chance risk, but real risk of things like heart attack, stroke, blood clots. You know, you hear these things on the commercials. And they're not going to look for the underlying cause. It's a simple and quick Band-Aid solution. But irregular cycles are very often due to a hormonal deficiency. And by replacing the missing hormone, women's cycles become regular, their mood can improve, their bleeding becomes normal. Women with this particular hormone deficiency will be at risk of miscarrying. And by identifying the problem in advance, we can actually, in many cases, prevent miscarriages before they happen. So these symptoms are a sign of an underlying problem that has other health implications. NAPRO technology stands for Natural Procreative Technology, and actually came from doctors and scientists trying to be faithful to the Church. They were actually looking to standardize and perfect a natural family planning method. But as they did their research, what they found is that the natural family planning chart that a woman records documenting the changes in her menstrual cycle could be used as a diagnostic tool and could also be used to help determine and time treatment, so that now we have alternatives to the birth control pill for almost every women's health condition that's treated with the birth control pill. Irregular cycles, abnormal bleeding, polycystic ovarian syndrome, severely painful periods. We have alternatives for treating menopausal symptoms and things that occur in the perimenopause. And we have a phenomenal alternative to in vitro fertilization for treating infertility and recurrent miscarriage. And so now, again, as a result of faithfulness to the Church's teachings, good ethics led to good medicine. We have better, healthier, more natural alternatives. Infertility is a symptom of something. Recurrent miscarriages happen because of some underlying problem. With NAPRO technology, we look very closely at hormonal problems, problems in the way a woman ovulates, anatomic problems that can be corrected. By identifying the problem, we can then provide treatment that actually works with the woman's naturally occurring cycle to restore health, restore normal function, and allow many, many couples to conceive through natural intercourse instead of having to turn to alternatives like in vitro fertilization or intrauterine insemination.
Well, that was very informative, and we'll have information on our website as to how you might find a NAPRO technology trained doctor in your area. But now, Astrid, let's get down to the Church's teaching. I think you had some good quotes for us.
Yes, the Catechism does provide the truth regarding this, why the technology in vitro fertilization is so tragic. This is what it teaches. Fecundity is a gift, an end of marriage, for conjugal love naturally tends to be fruitful. A child does not come from the outside as something added, but springs from the very heart of that mutual giving as its fruit and fulfillment. So we see how in vitro and these technologies violate what God naturally designed for marriage. Now, we talked about NAPRO technology, but there are other technologies that are illicit that I want to mention just for clarification for our viewers. So in lieu of IVF, people can consider the following technologies, and this one is, the acronym is GIFT, gamete intrafallopian transfer, and
I'm glad we had you read this.
I've been practicing. And LTOT, which is low tube ovum transfer, which they do not violate what we just talked about right now. It respects the marriage and the marital act the way God designed it.
And also, it's better for the woman.
That's right.
That's what I think is really important. And again, we've been stressing this over and over and over again. Sometimes I feel like I would say broken record, but nobody knows what records are anymore unless they're, you know, over 35.
Right, and the truth has been unleashed.
Yeah,
we see it
exactly.
in reality shows now. There's a show out, Juliana and Bill, where there's a couple going
she's
through.
She's the entertainment reporter, and
Yes.
they've been monitoring, following her with her, you know, and it's been really painful from what
Very
you've been telling
painful.
me.
She ended up in the hospital after her second cycle of IVF. It's very tragic to see the emotional turmoil, the stress on their marriage, and then the deception at the very end. So we're not making this up. This is something couples really are going through, and the secular media is acknowledging as well.
In terms of the information, is it getting out there though, do you think?
Little by little.
But I think the problem is, like I talked about my friend's daughter.
Because these, I don't mean to interrupt you, but these articles that you're reading from
Right.
seems to endorse it as opposed to trying to shed light on this topic.
Which
The New York Times article.
Well, yeah, that's what they are. Those articles are really endorsing it. And I think because we don't hear in the pulpit, I mean, we always look, did you ever hear a homily on IVF? You know, saying that
No.
you shouldn't use IVF? So like, that's why my girlfriend was so shocked about her daughter, because she said, I'm explaining to her why it's wrong. She doesn't understand. She goes, show me where the church says, or where in the Bible, or where in the catechism, you know, what they always say. And I think that's the problem. The information, the secular media so saturates the culture, like, oh, this is just another good thing, la, 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 la.
And then they look at us because they
Right.
say, well, you're so pro-life, you know, the
Right.
church is so pro-life.
Why are you
Why
against
would
them
you
having children?
against them having children?
Exactly.
Absolutely not. Objectively speaking here, it's true for the pill and all the contraceptives, and it's true for IVF. It kills babies. It forms human beings to harvest them, to freeze them, to discard them, to experiment on them. That's the reality, is whenever you use IVF, children will die, as it happens with contraception as well. So we know this objectively. Any doctor will acknowledge it. They just twist the language so people don't feel so bad about it. But the reality is that we're dealing with bodies and souls that are lost through this.
Right. It's just very, that's why we called this episode Weird Science. Now we do have quite a bit of homework for people, and this is important because there's a lot of information out there, and we want to give you the most recent information and the best websites. And if you're a new viewer to Catholic View, we need you to know that we have a great website. As we just said, it's called the CatholicViewForWomen.com. We have food for thought. We have links there. You can email us. You can like us on Facebook. This will give you an opportunity really to dive a little bit deeper into the topics that we present, especially a topic, you know, such as selective reduction and in vitro fertilization. Janet?
Okay, so for our homework, again, on the website, there will be links to the following two documents, Donum Vitae and also Dignitatis Personae. And also we'll have the catechism, quote that Catechism 2373 to 2379 that Asher quoted from. And these things need to be delved in deeper. We'll have discussion questions up there for them. And also, too, I think we need to turn to our Blessed Mother. And as you know, with the series, we have our Madonna of the Kitchen. Mary is the model for us, really. And, you know, when we come to these difficult decisions, having images of Our Lady around your home, and the Madonna of the Kitchen is another perfect example how we can bring Mary into our home, into our spirituality. And those of people who are having difficulty conceive a child, turn to our Blessed Mother, say a daily rosary, and pray for God to grant you the gift of life of children.
I do think it's really important, again, to tell people that the church is not trying to say that they're insensitive to this topic.
That's right.
Because the church is very, very sensitive to it. And there, as you've read from the Catechism, and as you've read in terms of an interview, the doctor, the expert on nephro-technology, there are options. People just don't hear about them.
That's right.
And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this show.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, some of these documents are there. You can get hard copies of them too, can't you?
Sure. If you go, first of all, if you go to the USCCB website,
you can order them, because this might be something,
ordered.
if you're in a women's group, especially
Yes.
with young married women. I'm thinking that might be a really good resource. I know Priests for Life has all kinds of things you can order from priestsforlife.org.
And I know in the
right?
religious catalog here at EWTN, they also have many
Right.
of the church documents you can get from the religious catalog also.
And also, we didn't include this, but you can also look for a CD by Dr. Marie Meany from Human Life International.
Oh, that's right.
called
You mentioned that before the show, right.
It's called Embracing the Cross of Infertility, so that we can really walk with Jesus and Mary through this difficult process.
Wow, great discussion. Again, it just went by so quickly. That's why we're going to have another show coming up on Weird sports science. So stay tuned. And again, go to our website. That is CatholicViewForWomen.com. I'm Teresa Tomeo for my co-hosts, Astrid Bennett Gutierrez and Janet Morana. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time here on EWTN, of course, on The Catholic View, news and views for women from a truly Catholic perspective. We'll see you next time.